In 1919, 8 men on the Chicago White Sox conspired with gamblers to throw the World Series, ultimately getting caught and dealing a massive blow to Americans' faith in baseball. First baseman Chick Gandil was their leader, and this is his story. Welcome back to The Bad Baseball Fan. Let's talk about the man who started the biggest scandal in baseball history. Charles Arnold Gandil, later to go by Chick, was born in St. Paul, Minnesota on January 19, 1888. By the time he was 12, his family had moved out west, where it's believed he first found his love for baseball. Chick first played organized ball in California for Oakland High School in 1902, where he played every position except first base. A dense bit of irony, given he would later make a living being one of the best defensive first basemen in Major League Baseball. He left high school after 2 years at just 16 and played on an amateur baseball team sponsored by the Los Angeles Herald newspaper. A year later, in his words, he ran away from home at the age of 17 and hopped a freight bound for Amarillo, Texas to play semi-pro. Over the next few years, he found himself playing ball in Humboldt, Arizona and Cananea, Mexico, playing for semi-pro or outlaw baseball teams in both towns. It was in Cananea, 40 miles south of the U.S. border, that Chick learned how to play first base. Making a name for himself, he finally dipped his toes in professional baseball for the Pacific Coast League in 1906. He then began his full-time professional career in 1908 in Shreveport, Louisiana as a part of the Texas League. It was here in Louisiana that he met his future wife, Laurel Kelly, who went by the name Faye. Gandil was drafted by the St. Louis Browns in 1909, but unfortunately, he failed to make the club out of spring training and was told he needed to play more ball down in Shreveport. Having no interest, Gandil never reported back down to Louisiana, instead fleeing out west with his wife to play for Fresno in the outlaw California State League. On the edge of being blacklisted from organized baseball for his actions, Gandil decided instead to play for the minor league Sacramento team of the Pacific Coast League. It was here that we have our first evidence of Chick getting into legal trouble. When leaving Fresno for Sacramento, he was arrested for absconding with $225 that had been advanced to him by the Fresno Ball Club. Playing well in Sacramento, Gandil was sold to the Chicago White Sox, where he made his major league debut the next season in 1910. After struggling mightily through his first season, to the tune of just a 193 average in 77 games, he was sold to Montreal of the Eastern League. He hit well there, batting over 300 in his just over one season, before being sold to the Washington Senators for his second shake at the big leagues. It was in Washington in 1912 where he would first meet Joseph Sport Sullivan, a key conspirator and perhaps the key instigator of the 1919 scandal. According to Elliot Azanov's 8 Men Out, the two would form a strong relationship, with Chick feeding Sport inside information for betting for the rest of Chick's career. Chick ended up playing the rest of 1912 for Washington, appearing in 117 games, batting .305, and leading the American League first baseman in fielding percentage. In his 3+ years in Washington, he batted .293, led the team in RBIs 3 times, led the American League first baseman in assists 3 times, and had the highest fielding percentage amongst all first basemen in the league for all 4 years. After playing for Cleveland in 1916, Gandil was sold to the White Sox for $3,500 in February of 1917, where he continued playing solid first base, helping the Sox win the World Series that year against the New York Giants. It would later be alleged that both Chick and his teammate/future co-conspirator Swee Risberg collected money from the White Sox to pay off Detroit to throw a late season series against the Sox, all but assuring the pennant for Chicago. Kennesaw Mountain Landis, first commissioner of baseball, investigated these allegations in 1927, but ultimately dismissed them. The season was shortened following World War I due to attendance concerns. Chick ended up re-signing for the same per-game salary as he had before, but this lowered his annual income from $4,000 to $3,500 going into 1919. It's important to remember that given the reserve clause, players had little to no bargaining power whatsoever. Penny-pinching owners like Comiskey could shortchange their players every year and get away with it, garnering awful reputations in baseball history. If you held out, there's a good chance the ball club's owner would just say, "to hell with you," and you would be out of baseball. This may have sowed permanent discord between several of the players and White Sox owner Charles Comiskey. In Gandal's own words, he was a sarcastic, belittling man who was the tightest owner in baseball. Most of the griping on the club centered around salaries, which were much lower than any other club in the league. On the eve of the White Sox winning the pennant, Joseph Sport Sullivan met with Chick Gandal in room 615 at Hotel Buckminster in Boston, where, according to Gandal, Sullivan approached him with the idea of fixing the series. In his words, "I had only social contacts with gamblers until that September day in 1919 when Sullivan walked up to Eddie Seacott and me as we left our hotel in Boston. As I recall, we were 4 games in front in the final week of the season, and it looked pretty certain that the pennant was ours. I was kind of surprised when Sullivan suggested that we get a syndicate together of 7 or 8 players to throw the series to Cincinnati. He had a persuasive manner which he backed up with a lot of cash. He said he was willing to pay $10,000 each to all the players we brought in on the deal. Considering our skimpy salaries, $10,000 was quite a chunk, and he knew it." It should be noted that other accounts, such as Elliot Azanov's, postulate that Chick was the clear instigator. Either way, Sullivan promised a $100,000 payout fronted by a mafia man named Arnold Rothstein to be split amongst the Black Sox. Gandal's responsibilities in the fix would be as the contact and to wrangle up the 7 other men who would participate. Later, he would also try to liaison for a second gambling ring with former ballplayer turned gambler Bill Burns and famed boxer Abe Attell, though this would never materialize. Gandal would reportedly end up walking with $35,000 of the $100,000, though in his words, "I never did get any part of Rothstein's $10,000 and I don't know who did. I give you my solemn word, I don't know to this day what happened to the cash." The White Sox lost the series in 8 games amidst public whisperings of a fix. Gandal batted .233 with 5 RBIs and a game-winning hit in extra innings. The next spring, he demanded a $2,000 annual raise from Comiskey, who promptly rejected him, and Gandal promptly retired from Major League Baseball. He returned home to California with his wife and began playing semi-pro baseball once again. He was in California in 1921 when he and the 7 other Black Sox were indicted on charges of fraud. The grand jury in Chicago returned a verdict of not guilty, and Kennesaw Landis handed down the lifetime bans the next day. Following the trial, Gandal went back out west and continued playing semi-pro baseball, playing in leagues in California, Arizona, and New Mexico, and playing with several banned players during those times, including some of the Black Sox. After his playing days, he settled in his childhood town of Berkeley, California, where he lived until 1954, when he retired to the Napa Valley region. In 1956, he did an exposé with Sports Illustrated, finally telling his part of the story. Gandal passed away on December 13, 1970. A little more than a year before his death, he claimed in an interview, "I'm going to my grave with a clear conscience." He died an inconspicuous man, his local community never knowing of his crimes to the sport of baseball. Chick Gandal's story, in many ways, represents the complexities of the average human life. One can't help but consider what drove him to make his decisions, from the $225 he tried to scam Fresno out of, to an ad taken out in the San Francisco newspaper by his father, openly disavowing him, to the 1917 fixing scandal, and of course the dark cloud that always looms over baseball history, the Black Sox Scandal. Chick Gandal seemed to often find himself in mischief of his own making. But were these choices made from greed, necessity, or maybe even some innate human nature that drives us towards chaos? We will never know the specific details of the Black Sox Scandal, and we'll never know for sure what drove Chick down the path he chose personally. What we do know is the consequences of his actions, for we live with them to this day. Maybe there were those who swindled the sport more than Chick Gandal, but they were never caught. His frequent desire to act fraudulently has left him with a reputation in the annals of the sport, the most corrupt man in baseball history. crucial research for this video was done using resources provided by the Society for American Baseball Research and BaseballReference.com. If you want to deep dive more in our national pastime, please visit sabr.org and BaseballReference.com to learn more. And while you're there, please consider donating to help fund these invaluable resources. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.